Do you remember when the entire world stopped? When families gathered around television sets? When strangers stood together in storefront windows? When everyone watching knew they were witnessing history unfold in real time? This was not a Canadian achievement. This was humanity's achievement. But Canadians experienced it together. July 20, 1969. Neil Armstrong stepped onto the moon while millions of Canadians watched from living rooms, community centres and crowded public spaces. For one extraordinary night, we were united not by borders or politics but by shared wonder at what human beings could accomplish. The grainy black and white images, the static-filled transmissions, the impossible made real before our eyes. Today we are remembering 1969, when Canada watched the moon landing together and felt part of something larger than ourselves. July 20, 1969, stands as a specific moment when the world held its breath, when time seemed to pause, when millions of people across the planet focused on the same impossible thing happening far above them. Canada was entering its third year post-centennial, still riding some optimism from Expo 67, still believing that progress and achievement were within reach, still united enough to share national moments. The space race was a Cold War proxy battle, the United States versus the Soviet Union. Technological competition, ideological competition. Each launch, orbit and milestone was scored like a sporting event with much higher stakes. Canada's role was clear. We were not a space power, we were observers and allies, but deeply invested observers. The outcome mattered to us even though we were not in the race ourselves. Television had become central to Canadian life by 1969, connecting the nation in ways radio never could, bringing shared images into living rooms across thousands of miles, creating simultaneous experience. This was the culmination of a decade of effort, Kennedy's promise fulfilled, or about to be. This was an American achievement, but Canadians felt part of it through proximity and alliance, through shared wonder at what humans could accomplish. We will explore how Canadians experienced this moment together, how it unified a watching nation for one extraordinary night. To understand what that night meant, we need to understand how the space race captured Canadian imagination. The space race began with Sputnik in 1957. That beeping Soviet satellite shocked the West, started a competition that would define the decade. Through the 1960s, Canadians followed every development. Yuri Gagarin became the first human in space. Alan Shepard followed, John Glenn orbiting Earth. Each milestone was front-page news in Canadian papers. Canadian media covered space extensively. Newspapers, radio and television are all tracking the race. The coverage was exhaustive because the interest was genuine. The Cold War context made it more than science. This was about which system was superior, democracy versus communism. The competition played out in space because nuclear war on Earth was unthinkable. Kennedy's 1961 promise to land on the moon by the decade's end was audacious and inspiring. Many thought it impossible. Canadian children dreamed of space. Toy rockets filled bedrooms. Space-themed television shows captured imaginations. Schools incorporated space into the curriculum. Science classes followed missions. The setbacks mattered too. The Apollo 1 fire in 1967 killed 3 astronauts. The grief was felt in Canada. The danger was real. Each successful mission built toward the goal. Apollo 8 orbiting the moon at Christmas 1968. Apollo 10 in May 1969 was a dress rehearsal. Everything ready. The anticipation through spring and early summer 1969 grew steadily. This was actually happening. Canadians felt invested despite not being directly involved. Proximity to the United States, shared values, shared wonder. If Apollo 11 succeeded, it would be humanity's triumph, not just America's. July 16, 1969 arrived. Apollo 11 launched from Florida. The launch happened on July 16, 1969, from Cape Kennedy. The massive Saturn V rocket was carrying 3 men toward the moon. Canadian media covered the launch live. The CBC and private stations bear roadcasting, the countdown, the ignition, the liftoff that filled the sky with fire. Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, Michael Collins, names Canadians knew well by then, the crew that would attempt what had never been done. The journey took 4 days, building suspense. The spacecraft is traveling 250,000 miles through space. Canadians followed updates religiously. Newspapers tracked progress. Television provided regular bulletins. The technology seemed miraculous. Traveling to the moon, communicating across that distance, hearing voices from space. Children asked their parents endless questions. How fast? How far? What will they see? The uncertainty remained. Nothing guarantees success. The danger was real. Apollo 1 had proven that. July 19 brought another milestone. Apollo 11 entered lunar orbit, one step closer. July 20 approached. The landing would happen late evening Eastern Time, perfect for Canadian viewing. Families made plans, stay up late, gather together, witness history. Businesses would close or pause. This was more important than commerce. The anticipation was shared across the country. Everyone is talking about it. Everyone is planning to watch. The excitement building through those 4 days was palpable. Conversations everywhere focused on the same thing. Will they make it? The journey created communal anticipation across Canada. July 20, 1969 arrived. The landing would happen that night. Understanding how Canadians watched requires understanding the technology that made it possible. Television in 1969 was not universal, but it was common. Not every household had one, but most did. The sets were furniture pieces, bulky wooden cabinets with small screens. They dominated living rooms. Black and white was still the standard. Color television existed but remained a luxury. Most Canadians would watch the moon landing in shades of grey, which seemed appropriate given the lunar landscape. The CBC served as the national broadcaster, a unifying force bringing the same images to the entire country simultaneously. From St. John's to Victoria, Canadians watched identical broadcasts. Private networks also carried the coverage. This transcended commercial competition. All channels showed the same thing. There was nothing else to watch because nothing else mattered. For those without televisions, solutions emerged. Stores kept their window displays on. Crowds gathered outside on the sidewalks, watching through plate glass. Strangers standing together in the July evening. Community centers opened their doors, creating public viewing spaces. Larger screens. More people can witness together. Small towns organized communal watching where the entire community could gather. The technology of transmission was itself miraculous. Signals bouncing from the moon to Earth. Relay stations around the world. The complexity of it all. The miracle that it worked at all. The quality was poor. Grainy images, static-filled audio, barely visible figures moving across the screen. You had to squint and imagine to fill in what the transmission could not show clearly. But it was real time, happening now, not filmed earlier. Genuine live transmission from the surface of the moon. The poor quality somehow made it more real, more authentic, too raw to be faked. The commentary was crucial. Broadcasters explained what viewers were seeing, filling in the details that the images could not convey, providing context and wonder in equal measure. Canadian and American voices mixed in the coverage. Shared broadcasts, shared wonder. The border is irrelevant for those hours. Radio served those who could not watch. Audio-only participation. Hearing the voices from the moon. Imagining the images others were seeing, still part of the shared experience. The sense grew through the evening that technology was connecting everyone. People across Canada are watching the same images simultaneously, an unprecedented scale of shared experience. This was new. Shared national experience mediated by television. Millions are witnessing the same thing at the same time. The technology creates unity through simultaneous viewing. Normal life paused. Stores closed early. Traffic thinned. The nation stopped for something more important than commerce or routine. Television made the moon landing a collective experience, unifying Canadians through shared viewing of something no one had ever seen before. As evening arrived on July 20, Canadians gathered. The evening of July 20 brought Canadians together in ways both typical and extraordinary. Families gathered in living rooms across the country, parents with children, sometimes extended family, everyone focused on the television, waiting for history. Snacks were prepared. This would be hours of waiting. Popcorn, drinks, food to sustain the vigil. Living rooms transformed into viewing theaters. Lights dimmed, volume up, reverent atmosphere. But many watched communally, neighbors invited in. Viewing parties are organized. Community centers in small towns opened their doors. Entire communities are watching together on larger screens. Churches opened too. Some saw a spiritual dimension to the achievement. Bars and restaurants stayed open late. Crowds watching together. Strangers united. Store windows drew crowds on sidewalks. Those without televisions stand outside in the summer evening air, watching through the glass. The cross-section of Canada was watching. Rich and poor, urban and rural, young and old, French and English Canada together. Language difference is irrelevant. Shared human experience. Indigenous Canadians watched with complex feelings. Humanity reached the moon while its own rights were ignored here on Earth. People dressed up slightly, treated it as an event, not casual television. Children were allowed to stay up late. Parents recognized historical importance. The conversations during the wait were constant. Speculation, wonder, technical questions. The nervousness was real. Would it work? Would they survive? Would we actually see someone walk on the moon? The moon landing created spaces for communal gathering, for shared witness to history. Then, at 10:56 p.m. Eastern Time, Neil Armstrong descended the ladder. The moment arrived at 10:56 p.m. Eastern Time, on July 20, 1969. Neil Armstrong stepped onto the moon. the grainy image appeared on Canadian screens, a barely visible figure descending a ladder, moving slowly and carefully down toward the lunar surface. Every Canadian watching held their breath. Armstrong's words came through the static. "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." The transmission was poor, the audio crackled, but the meaning was absolutely clear. A human being was walking on the moon. Canadian living rooms erupted. Cheers, tears, hugs, disbelief mixed with joy. The impossible is happening in real time on television screens across the country. Children sat wide-eyed, witnessing the impossible made real. Their understanding of what was possible expanded in that instant. If humans could walk on the moon, what could not be achieved? Adults became emotional. Many wept openly, overcome by the achievement, by the audacity, by the success against such impossible odds. The tears were joy and relief and wonder all mixed together. The sense of witnessing history was universal. Everyone watching knew this mattered, knew they would remember this moment for the rest of their lives, knew they would tell their children and grandchildren about this night. Strangers in public viewing spaces hugged each other. Barriers dissolved in shared wonder. People who had never met embraced because the moment demanded it. Because joy this profound needed to be shared physically. The images continued. Armstrong is moving in low gravity, bouncing across the surface in ways that looked unreal. He planted the American flag, collected samples, spoke with mission control. Every moment was historic. Buzz Aldrin joined him on the surface. Two humans are now on another world, walking, working, exploring. The achievement doubled, the wonder multiplied. The conversations across Canada were about humanity, not America specifically, not the West, but human achievement, what our species has accomplished. The pride was not nationalistic, but existential. The pride by proxy was real. Canada's ally had done this. We felt part of it through proximity and support, through cheering them on, through believing it was possible. The Cold War receded briefly. This felt bigger than the competition between superpowers. This was a species achievement. Humans on the moon. All of us, not just some of us. Phone lines lit up across Canada. People are calling relatives, sharing the moment, confirming it was real, making sure others were watching, needing to talk about what they were seeing. Newspapers were already planning special editions. This would dominate tomorrow's front pages. The largest headlines, the most dramatic photographs. Nothing else would matter. The realization was settling in slowly. We just watched a human walk on the moon. Life would never be the same. The universe felt different now, smaller, more accessible. For those minutes, Canadians were united in wonder and pride in human capability. As Armstrong and Aldrin explored the lunar surface, something shifted in Canadian consciousness. The moonwalk lasted over 2 hours. Canadians watched transfixed through all of it. When Armstrong and Aldrin returned to the lunar module, relief mixed with exhilaration. They had survived. They would come home. Late night became early morning. Many Canadians stayed up through the entire sequence, watching until the astronauts were safely back inside. Children went to bed having seen the impossible. Their understanding of potential was transformed permanently. The next morning brought newspapers with massive headlines. Special editions sold out within hours. Everyone wanted the physical proof. Everyone was talking about it. Workplaces, streets, coffee shops, the universal Canadian topic. The shared experience created common ground. Strangers could discuss it. Everyone had watched the same thing. National unity emerged through shared wonder. English Canada and French Canada. The linguistic divide is temporarily irrelevant. Regional differences forgotten. A brief moment of optimism swept across the country. If humans could walk on the moon, what else was possible? Pride in Western achievement was real. Canadians felt a connection despite not leading it. Our allies had done this. Children declared they wanted to be astronauts, scientists or engineers. The moon landing inspired a generation. Canada's role was acknowledged. Tracking stations, technical cooperation. We were part of the team. The moon landing created brief but genuine unity across Canadian divisions, but the unity and optimism would prove temporary. The moon landing happened amid significant turmoil. 1969 was a complex year. The Vietnam War was escalating. Protests erupted across Canada. The moon landing was an American achievement during the American War. The connection was uncomfortable. The October crisis was 1 year away. Quebec nationalism had not disappeared. It had merely paused. Indigenous Canadians watched while denied basic rights. The irony was profound. Humanity reached the moon while First Nations lacked clean water and self-determination. The counterculture was challenging the establishment. The moon landing was a government and military achievement. The same institutions that young people were rejecting. The environmental movement was emerging. Billions spent on space while poverty persisted. Pollution increased. Inequality widened. The Cold War continued. The space race was a military competition. The rockets were modified missiles. The technology had weapons applications. The generational divide was visible. Older Canadians are inspired. Younger Canadians are more skeptical. The gender dimension was stark. All male astronauts. All male mission control. Half of humanity is watching but not participating. But the genuine wonder was also real. Both things could be true. The moon landing was an inspiring achievement and a problematic priority. Unity and division simultaneously. The moon landing created unity, but existed within a complex, troubled context. More than 50 years later, that night still resonates. The moon landing remained a touchstone memory. Where were you when Armstrong walked on the moon? Became a universal Canadian question. The shared experience created a lasting common history. Children who watched were inspired. Some became scientists, engineers, or astronauts. The photographs of Earth from space influenced the environmental movement, seeing our planet as a fragile whole. The Canadian space program grew. Communications satellites, Canadarm, eventually Canadian astronauts, but the unity proved temporary. Canadian divisions reasserted. Shared wonder was possible, but did not erase underlying tensions. Did your parents or grandparents watch the moon landing? What do they remember? The grainy images, Armstrong's words, staying up late, the shared excitement. The contrast with today is stark. We watch historic events individually on phones now, not collectively. We lost communal witnessing, but gained a more critical perspective. If this brought back memories, share them below. Subscribe for more Canadian history. 1969 proved that shared wonder can unite Canadians across divisions. For one night, we watched the moon landing together and felt part of something larger than ourselves. That possibility remains.